The Power of Encouragement, Teddy and Mrs. Thompson, by Elizabeth Silence Ballard. Jean Thompson stood in front of her 5th grade class on the very first day of school in the fall and told the children a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her pupils and said that she loved them all the same, that she would treat them all alike. And that was impossible because there in front of her, slumped in his seat on the 3rd row, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed he didn't play well with the other children, that his clothes were unkempt and that he constantly needed a bath. And Teddy was unpleasant. It got to the point during the first few months that she would actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen, making bold X's, and then marking the F at the top of the paper biggest of all. Because Teddy was a sullen little boy, no one else seemed to enjoy him either. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's records, and she put Teddy's off until last. When she opened his file, she was in for a surprise. His 1st grade teacher wrote,
Teddy is a bright, inquisitive child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He is a joy to be around.
His 2nd grade teacher wrote,
Teddy is an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother has a terminal illness, and life at home must be a struggle.
His 3rd grade teacher wrote,
Teddy continues to work hard, but his mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if some steps aren't taken.
Teddy's 4th grade teacher wrote,
Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends and sometimes sleeps in class. He is tardy and could become a problem.
By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, but Christmas was coming fast. It was all she could do, with the school play and all, until the day before the holidays began and she was suddenly forced to focus on Teddy Stoddard. Her children brought her presents, all in beautiful ribbon and bright paper, except for Teddy's, which was clumsily wrapped in the heavy brown paper of a scissored grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing, and a bottle that was 1/4 full of cologne. She stifled the children's laughter when she exclaimed how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume behind the other wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed behind just long enough to say,
Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to.
After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On that very day, she quit teaching reading and writing and speaking. Instead, she began to teach children. Jean Thompson paid particular attention to one they all called Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. On days there would be an important test, Mrs. Thompson would remember that cologne. By the end of the year, he had become one of the smartest children in the class and, well, he had also become the pet of the teacher who had once vowed to love all of her children exactly the same. A year later, she found a note under the door from Teddy telling her that she was the best teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 6 years passed by, and to her surprise, another note came from Teddy. He wrote that he had finished high school 3rd in his class and that she was still the best teacher that he had ever had in his whole life. 4 years later, another letter came, saying that while things had been tough at times, he stayed in school and stuck with it, and that he had graduated from college with the highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson that she was still the very best and favorite teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 4 more years passed by, and yet another letter came. This time he explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he had decided to go a little further. again, assuring her that she was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had. The letter was signed Theodore Stoddard, M.D. The story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he'd met this girl and was to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago, and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the pew usually reserved for the mother of the groom. And on that special day, Jean Thompson wore that bracelet, the one with the rhinestones missing. And on that special day, Jean Thompson smelled the way Teddy remembered his mother smelling on their last Christmas together. After the wedding, they hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear,
"Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference."
Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back,
Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you.